There we go. Well, good afternoon and welcome. I'm Janine Peroy-Gamblin, and I'm Programs and Marketing Coordinator for Inlandia Institute, a literary and cultural arts nonprofit located here in inland Southern California. Today, we are proud to celebrate the launch of two Inlandia publications. The 2022 Writing from Inlandia Anthology, which is our hard copy anthology collected writings, and the fall issue of our online literary journal, which is called Inlandia, A Literary Journey. And we are delighted to have you here, participants and guests. But before we get any further, I'd like to say a few words. Inlandia Institute respectfully acknowledges and recognizes our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Luiseño, and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, the Inlandia region is home to many indigenous peoples from all over the world, and we express our gratitude to them for allowing us the opportunity to live and work on these homelands. I am here today with the editor of our online journey, Inlandia Literary Journey, which is on our online journal, Erin Michaelis-Sweeney. She's the managing editor, and I'm going to call her up right now to say a few words. So, Erin, I know you're there. Hold on just a second.
No worries. Take your time.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. There you are. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, Janine. Before we launch into the launch, we wanted to take a minute to recognize the passing of an Inlandia friend. Randy, who volunteered his time on this fall issue and in past issues of the online journal, and I wanted to introduce Victoria Waddle, the previous managing editor, to say a little bit more about Randy and what he meant to us.
Thank you, Erin. I just wanted to briefly talk about Randy. He passed away from complications of pneumonia a couple of days ago on Friday. And so it's been a surprise to us all. It was kind of an interesting, so I wanted to just mention a few things about him. And, you know, I was thinking about Randy this morning, and he and I have known many people in common, and we have known each of them storytelling. And as my workshop members, my Inlandia workshop members have been sharing about Randy, because he's in that workshop over the past few days, it's clear that they had developed a genuine empathy for one another. Randy would reach out to members privately after they shared difficult personal stories. He was interested in their work and their other creative endeavors outside of writing. His story, I think, is an example of why we write. And our writing, our narratives, they lead to these other deeper connections, right? Randy was just a perfect example of that. I met Randy many years ago in the Ontario Inlandia workshop, way back when Tim Hatch was the group leader. And he made the trip out from Redlands area with some of our other longtime members, Linda Rhodes, David Stone, Robin Longfield, and Heather Dubois. And they'd have dinner together before we all gathered at the City of Ontario's main library for our critique sessions. And then we liked each other so much, the whole group in this wonderful Inlandia workshop, that during the summers and the winter breaks, we would all gather for dinner at my house when I lived in Claremont. And we would just enjoy one another's company, and we just didn't want the story to stop, right? Well, ultimately, Randy was in every writer's workshop that I was in, both through Inlandia and outside of it. And during the COVID sheltering, we would sometimes have 3 or 4 Zoom workshops per week. And Randy brought different work to each one. He was deeply imaginative. So when I was the managing editor of Inlandia, A Literary Journey, I wanted to be a fiction editor. And he was always willing to help. Randy's fiction is fantastical and it's fun. He had an entire complicated system of magic in his mind. He had a group of stories and a series of novels he was working on that were centered around the Circle of Nine. And in his Circle of Nine, the practitioners are called the Lifted. And their stories begin in the days of King Arthur, and then they move through the present. Randy had thoroughly revised his first Lifted novel. And this summer, he was working with an editor on a query letter, and he had reached the point where he was ready to bring his Lifted characters out into the world. And now, so unexpectedly, Randy has been lifted from our lives. So magical travels, Randy. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Vic. Erin,
Yes.
I
thank you.
wonder if you could transition from that bit of sorrow to the joyful process of creating the online journal. A few words about it. And
Sure.
and I see Fernanda has joined us. Fernanda is our anthology she's our publications coordinator and the anthology editor. So Fernanda, get ready because I'm going to call on you next.
Yeah, Randy, speaking of, just stepping up, he not only read fiction submissions, but when I put out an SOS for some help with the overwhelming number of poetry submissions, he stepped up and he said, sure, I'll give it a try. I'll pitch in. And that's the kind of person that he was. And I think that he would really want us to celebrate him and celebrate this launch of the fall issue, as well as the 2022 workshop anthology. And so let's celebrate it in his honor. And I'll just take a few moments to say this fall issue is huge. We got so many submissions, and it was amazing and a little bit overwhelming. And along with all of the journal participants here today on Zoom, we also have a record number of recorded audio files of poems, fiction, creative nonfiction available to accompany the writings for this particular issue. And so I put in the link on the chat. I'll be refreshing and reminding folks about where you can find inlandiajournal.net, N-E-T. And so I think maybe we should proceed forward after we hear a little bit from Fernanda, perhaps.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Erin.
There she is.
Hey, and welcome, Fernanda. This is our publications coordinator, Fernanda Vidarazaga. She says it a million times better than I do. And I go ahead and tell us a bit about the anthology.
Hi, everyone. Yes, as Janine said, my name is, I'll say it, Fernanda Vidarazaga. I'm the publications coordinator and editor for Inlandia Institute. Some of you have seen my name for many years now. especially those of you who have contributed to the Writing from Inlandia anthology for the last 3 years or for more than just this year. I'm the person who's emailing you with edits, with check-ins, and to make sure that your work is the best that it can be before it goes out into the world alongside you. Yeah, what to say about the Writing from Inlandia anthology? This is just always such a pleasure to work on. I think it's one of my favorite books that we publish because it really just is about the community, right? It's about all of us as writers, creatives, and artists coming together and sharing our work and a bit about ourselves in certain cases, and really just embracing this community that Inlandia has created since its inception. So every single year, I am really excited to see what new names come through the submittable windows and what returning names come through as well. So, I mean, it's always a pleasure to work on your work with you. And I'm really excited to be here for the launch and to hear people share their work and to hear people share their work as well for the journal. Which I hardly ever get to look at. So I'm really excited to be a part of this. And I thank you all for trusting me with your work and each year, and for being a part of Inlandia.
Thank you so much, Fernanda. I'm going to switch you out. I'm going to start introducing readers. Let's launch into the launch. So we're glad you could join us as well. I'm going to replace the spotlight with Elizabeth Uter, who's going to be our first reader today. Elizabeth is an award-winning poet for the 2018 poem for, I want to say Slough. Is that right, Elizabeth? Okay, competition. You know, there are at least 4 ways to pronounce the spelling of that word. She's facilitated poetry workshops, performed at festivals. She's also published widely in anthologies and journals, I should say. And we are delighted she can join us today from the UK. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. So my very first poem is called Dance of Delirium. The ancients used to say, there is a dance of ecstasy, of rapture so profound that in the thrashing of movements, all is lost to madness. I, rolling in the head, it's the kind of extreme when bodies whirling are beyond. The spiritual dervish turns and turns. It is as if possessed, sometimes not even following steps. They are moving in delirium, abandoning self to eternal and internal rhythm, leading to trance. Sacred dancing to the god Dionysus, he who liberated wine, and as if in drunken stupor, his followers, maenads, maidens all, demand no man must watch as they flow, flop, and drop. And if male eyes see their ways, they would tear him limb from limb, could not suffer him to live. Where do these wild-eyed ones go to, beyond the blankness of eye? It is said, they wait in a transcendent state, within the mind of their God. My second poem is called Museum at World's End. The museum at the end of the world reopens for business. It has mechanized legs that walk its bulk about the yard. Some say it looks a little like a hairy millipede, stretching aching feet in a dance across a sun-bleached patch. Inside, as strange as the outside, it contains the secret things of our planet. Imagine all the thoughts, every single soul trapped in amber-like vessels, each receiving, giving off silky vapors in different shades, black, white, gold, red, umber, silver, a continuous coiling in and out. is the sinewing of snaky shapes. There are blessings, curses, toing and froing. There are heartstrings dangling from ceilings, emoting notes as if from golden harps. There are words that make up the walls, sturdy, weak, beautiful, harsh, meek, combining to form a solid whole. Then there is the curator, a raggedy man, as if formed from the parts of a jigsaw puzzle. Sky blue here, cloud puffs there, blank, blank, green tree, chrysanthemums there, a painted horse head on his coat front, a badger on his back, a hat the size of a chimney stack, with giraffe designs overlaying that, ever sliding downwards. His face a mystery, eyes peridot deep gems, nose as straight as eagle's eyes, and rounded mouth full of fluff, is the stuffing that makes up a plush toy. He's a clockwork invention, precise at stacking shelves, stamping approval on items to be removed. The museum at World's End is opening today, and the strange things of life will come alive at once and play. My final poem is called Over the Edge. Over the edge of the world. It must have been a little like this for the early explorers. A scrap of a map, the Imago Mundi, a Babylonian treasure, or the full scope and measure of the Peri race, showing Africa, Europe, Brazil, in times before history says they should have been shown or known by the Ottoman Empire. The world on fire with the want, the need, the greed, the speed to know more and more, see more, be more, have more. A universe of abundance must have felt like their flat-packed world, as detailed as an idea from IKEA, would slip them into oblivion or the abyss, off the edge of the world. Scenario in book folio, quarto octavio, a waterfall lip that could lead to Valhalla, the glory port of berserkers, or a Christian hell that housed the shells of men, of women, innumerable as the breath of every human then and now, glimpsed over all past ages into one drop, traveling to the end of the ends of the earth, could be the birth of extraordinary life on Terra. To know that you on your island are not alone, if you just peeked, is how we feel about the universe today, wishing to traverse space, time, continually chasing how far thoughts made manifest can lead us, boldly going in this form where no man has gone before, to know who we are, where we are right now, and where we need to go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. What a wonderful way to start our program today. Beautiful. I'm going to switch to our next reader, who is Mary Camarillo. Mary is the author of 2 award-winning novels, and her poems and short fiction have appeared in a variety of publications. Mary currently lives in Huntington Beach with her husband and their terrorist cat, Riley. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much. How to create a compliant child. You don't mean to do any of this, not at first anyway. You don't realize how much help you will need when your singer-songwriter husband talks you into moving to Nashville with him and your 3 small children. You have no idea how much you'll miss your mom, but you quickly understand how smart you were to have had a girl child first, who is obedient and helpful and eager to please, probably because you only praise her when she is obedient and helpful and eager to please. You give her dolls for Christmas and birthdays and tell her what a good little mommy she is now and will be later when she grows up. You put her in charge of her younger brothers and have her say her prayers every night, making sure she God blesses mommy first. You remind her to ask God to bless her brother and her daddy too, although you goddamn him most of the time, mostly when the kids are out of earshot, but little pitchers have big ears and their daddy is mostly a son of a bitch with an even younger than you girlfriend and an expensive new preference for premium shelf bourbons. You teach your girl child to tell time, change diapers, and turn off the coffee pot. When you have to get a crappy waitress job at Denny's because your singer-songwriter husband is out on tour again, and there is no money in the checking account again, You show your girl child how to use the small stool by the fridge to open the freezer, take out frozen meatballs, put them in the crock pot, use the can opener, pour in 2 cans of mushroom soup, put the lid on, and turn the heat to low. She teaches her brothers how to tie their shoes, blow their noses, whistle, jump, and be quiet when mommy is taking a nap, because you were tired from working cocktails all night at your second job at the Fling. She is the eyes in the back of your head, reporting to you immediately when her brothers fight, forget that they are toilet trained, make ugly faces, say bad words, or break mommy's favorite margarita glass. Reinforce her realization of the heavy burden of responsibility. Blame her for everything that goes wrong, especially when the wrong things are not her fault. Act like you are angry and don't speak to her all day. Don't explain what she did wrong, because she should already know. Occasionally demonstrate sufficient and unexpected rage to the extent that you witness her shrink into herself, trying to appear to be as small as possible. She's seen you in this position too many times. It's not difficult for her to copy you. Teach her to apologize no matter what. She needs to learn that everything actually is her fault. It took you too long to realize this. There are so many things you didn't know. You were 18 and finally out of high school. You don't know your singer-songwriter, then boyfriend, is living with 2 women in Culver City when you greyhound from Columbia to find him. You don't have any idea his band is about to explode. When you finally get to California, they have a regular gig at the Whiskey A Go-Go, but you don't know where or what that is, and you don't know what to wear when he finally shrugs and says, "You can come with if you want." You decide on an embroidered peasant top and patchwork cutoffs, mostly because they are your cleanest available choices. But the women he is living with dress up in slinky slips and put on makeup, but no underwear. They tell you how adorable you look, and it doesn't sound like a compliment. His band is good, really good, and you can almost believe he is looking at you when he sings about his lover. You don't know right away that you are pregnant. You haven't decided if you even want kids. After you've failed the pregnancy test, you watch one of the women he lives with mortar and pestle tabs of acid into dust, and then let her daughter lick the bowl. You know you can't stay there. You call your mom, trying not to cry. She sends you a bus ticket home. You listen to your parents say, "I told you so." You pick up a catalog from the local community college, get a part-time job at the Pick and Save, and wait for the baby to come. You don't realize that the singer-songwriter will show up at your parents' front door right when you are enormous and sweaty to tell you that his band signed a record deal and he got a big advance. You have no idea you can talk him into marrying you, but he buys a ring and moves you into an apartment. He puts a crib together. You throw away the college catalog. I'll stop there. Thank you, Inlandia.
Thank you so much, Mary. That story, oh my goodness, we're gonna have to go online to read the rest. Thank you. Our next reader is Chris, the Poetic Genius Green. Chris is a poet from Gloucester, Virginia, and he takes the name, the Poetic Genius, as a challenge to himself to live up to it. The Poetic Genius hopes that his poetry will honor his people and inspire many, including his singer-songwriter daughter, Layla. Welcome. We're so happy to have you today.
Thank you. I'm going to start with my poem, Breaking Myth. They say Black fathers don't exist. They say they can't resist the exit. That Black men inherit the deed to broken homes, turn into rolling stones and crack foundations. That it's in our makeup. But my father and the fathers that made up my son's makeup stayed present and prayed up in a world that made them split like a lip under the weight of death and oppression, carried sorrow in our souls but never showed the expression. When told what we aren't capable of, made them question. Black fathers keep them guessing. But they say they're one note, flat, broke, and disgusting, untrusting with the woman's heart. My father showed me the lie in that. Over 30 years of marriage to the same one, never left his 2 sons or grands. No, both my grands. Black men that never ran, stayed strong even in disease, walked into the light, still loved, still in memory. never were a mystery or removed number. But I can't tell you the number of times I've heard the myth. Black fathers don't exist, how they can't escape the exit, how they know not of family or responsibility, a falsehood to our fatherhood. I came to tear down that neighborhood of lies. I love and labor for mine, stretch myself to make ends meet, never show defeat. The next up, watching what I cast, the mold I leave behind can fit a whole generation. My grandson could be waiting. I'll be ready with my battle scarred like wrinkled hands, ready to give him his lift, ready to teach him how to break myth. My next poem is Unbothered. She's a bold, beautiful Black woman with a barricaded aura, protected space, misrepresented as attitude. Defends herself with a machete mouth that would cut the baddest brother down. If she must. She'd rather not, but her bounty attracts the hungriest of hunters, can feel their eyes on her whenever she walks. Behind the barricade, few make it past. There's a laugh loud but infectious, jumps from person to person when it's unchained. She's tied up in responsibility. Determination keeps her bound, some say, but who can tell her she works too hard? She has places to be, knows others less deserving can beat her there. Knows she deserves a spot, shoulders many burdens she doesn't feel safe enough to unpack, fears the disadvantage it could bring to her dwelling. Always told what she should be, doesn't buy into what most are selling, how they perpetrate as artists, promising they know how to shape her. She fits her own mold, knows it broke when she was made, knows she's unlike anyone else, so she's unfazed, unimpressed with empty words and pasted praise and worship. Her God and her peace are her church, her worth. I admire from a distance I can't approach from. What makes me less than a hunter, knowing I want to capture time with her. Enjoy the spoils of being spoiled by her presence, the present, and sharing in her trapped laughter I'm not bold enough to try to release. I'm just an artist, painting what I think I see, staring too long, probably, wondering if I can hop the barricade and survive the blade, wondering if I'm cut from the cloth she'll accept, or if I should just let her be. Bold, beautiful, Black, and unbothered. Thank you, Inlandia. I appreciate it.
And we appreciate you. Thank you for being here today. You've left us speechless. Beautiful job. Our next reader is Dawn Hogel. Dawn has published over 90 poems in almost 60 journals, including in Atlanta Review, the Carolina Quarterly, Chautauqua Journal, and the Penn Review. He was a finalist for the 2023 Tucson Festival of Books Literary Awards. He lives in Manhattan. Welcome, Don. We're glad to have you today.
Thank you, Janine, and thank you, Aaron. I'm going to read one poem. Before I became a poet, I was trained as an actor in my younger days, and I think that probably that experience caused me to have a series of recurring dreams, and many of you may have had these experiences as well, where I was about to enter on the stage. It was my cue was coming up, and I had absolutely no idea what my lines were. So that particular terror, I think, influences this poem. And the other part of it, it's called Act 3, which of course is a theatrical thing, but there's also an idea about how we can take our lives and put them into 30-year segments, to 3 30-year segments. And so this is called Act 3, which references that a little bit. And I think I'm now 10 years into the third one. And so I think with every passing day, this poem becomes more and more relevant to me. Act 3. You've landed on a cinnamon shore. Through what process or principle of physics, you don't know. A splattered mass of stars is strewn around you. Hickory smoke no longer calms the bees. They strafe the ferns. You're agitated by lilacs. You're waiting for a goldfinch to return, the one that fed yesterday on the new shoots of wisteria. You walk into an ice cream parlor. The heart-shaped chairs are the only sign of caring. Is everything all right? You ask a turban girl. Of course not, the restaurant inspector replies. There's been a murder. You can't remember the last time you were tested for homicide, but you realize you're on a stage set. It's a play. They can't actually arrest you. Time is the villain of the piece. Your joints creak like floor planks, medieval weaponry clanks in your ears. So you don't remember your lines. You read the book, you saw the movie, you'll improvise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Don. I think we're all remembering those dreams we've had too. Our next reader is going to be Anne E. Michael. Anne's most recent book, The Red Queen Hypothesis and Other Poems, won the 2022 Prairie State Poetry Prize. She's the author of Water Rights and 6 chapbooks. Her next collection is forthcoming from Kelsey Books in the spring of 2024. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I have 2 poems in this launch journal, so I'll just read them. The first one is also kind of a dream. The Room Where You Are Not. I conjure it often. Its doors, its portals that lead to porches, porticos, a courtyard, its interior shaded by vines and paws. Never a lawn. How sunlight sidles slantways late summer days, the way stars embed themselves in shadows, slats, plaster, little night lights, orb chairs and tables, fireflies indoors, because the room where you are not acts like a lintel between in and out, depthless and obscure as fog bunches into corners, as if this room had corners or ceiling or were anything at all, only shining and warm. And sadly, I cannot describe the room where you are. The next poem is called Surveying. Above zinnias, grasses, bindweed, eastern kingbird perched on a garden post bows once, dips its slate-colored tail. I love the kingbirds, compact, elegant, their dark heads poised. They don't hustle in corn stalks like finches, shake the barley, rend the blossoms. Their pale chests shine on rainy summer days when the world tightens every brilliant nerve in my spine and won't release. Kingbird alights. Where's the terror of letting go? A young rabbit tucks itself into miracles of damp green grass. My world's just to survey. It never has been mine. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Just absolutely gorgeous. We really appreciate you. Okay. Our next reader is Connie Jameson. She's reading from the anthology. By the way, I meant to say that for each and every reader who came before, so forgive me for just figuring it out now. Connie Jameson is a retired elementary and special education teacher. She enjoys writing children's picture books, poetry, and short stories. Her first published book is Dating and Mating, Wit and Wisdom on Love and Marriage. Thank you so much for being here, Connie.
Thank you. My first poem is about wings. It was a fight or flight moment, and I sprouted wings. I sprouted wings again, and again, and again, as I always seem to do. Instead of standing up Instead of speaking up, I'm just up, up, up and away from the situation. But these wings don't help me soar. No, just escape. I don't say what should be said, nor do what should be done. I don't state my views. I don't fight for my cause. I just close my lips and swallow my voice. I experience no exhilaration of resolve, just the disappointment of resignation. If I continue to sprout wings every time there is conflict, I'll eventually feel the weight of wings, unable to fight or take flight, but just give up, cease to care, be nothing, lying there, hidden under all those wings. My second is called The Image. A slight sound, a movement, no, an overwhelming feeling, a magnetic pull, a mesmerizing presence caused Rachel to turn away from her bright, pleasant, ordinary day and face there in the darkened corner, that image, an image that brought immediate feelings, shock, terror, panic, like nothing she'd ever felt before. Pounding heart, shallow, rapid breath. Weak and unsteady, Rachel tried to turn, flee, escape, but found she could not move. Then, amazingly, her extreme, frightened reaction to the image suddenly disappeared, replaced by a profound calmness, a gentle, persistent pull, drawing her into its gaze. Rachel could not divert her eyes from those unblinking, deep, dark, liquid pools that looked not so much at as into her very being. It knows me, knows my very soul, inside and out, past, present, and future. What does it see? What does it know? What does it want? What is it? Who is it? And finally, love at first sight. It was love at first sight, that delectable delight displayed on the dessert cart, resting on a flaky melt in your mouth crust, a lovely layer of lemon cream, teasing my taste buds with thoughts of its tantalizing, tangy, tart taste. Atop the luscious looking lemon layer, a fluffy mound of whipped cream, little rivulets of dark chocolate syrup cascading down its sides, curls of dark chocolate shavings scattered about, plump red raspberries arranged around the base completed this masterpiece. Ah, this lovely creation piled high with my very favorite flavors, lemon, raspberry, whipped cream, and dark chocolate, but also loaded with calories. So, dear waitress, I cannot indulge in this temptation. No, I must instead choose the sugar-free Jell-O. But please, let me gaze just a little longer at that special dessert I really crave, the one that was truly love at first sight.
Thank you so much, Connie. Our next reader coming up is Daria E. Topusis. Okay on the last name there, Daria?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Good.
And thank you, Inlandia, for having me and including my piece in the online journal.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much. I was just going to say a couple words about you.
Oh,
You're
sorry.
a creative nonfiction and fiction writer, and your work has explored the intersection of culture, history, and the moments that change us. So thank you for being here today, Daria.
Thank you. I'm going to read from my short story, King of the Arroyo. Gary had been all around this big old country, from the boggy swamps of Louisiana to the dry desert plains of Colorado, from the ivy-covered colleges of New England to the starlit streets of Southern California. He thumbed rides on open interstates and worked at ranches and factories to pay for his next ride to another place, another adventure, another unknown town. He thought this would be true for the rest of his life, riding the rails, never letting the dust settle under his feet. But one day, while walking the steep hillsides and canyons of the San Gabriel Mountains, a place where Vasquez the Bandit hid out from the law and where the sons of abolitionist John Brown lived their last years, he caught a ride on a rickety old tugboat. It stood empty at the edge of the river, paint chipped and bow bent, but inviting all the same. He clung to its plastic corners as it slid down the ravines and whizzed through the trees, a magical ride through old oaks, feral figs, sycamores, and madrone. It washed up on a shore bounded by rocks and hillsides, a place that hadn't seen real rain for several years, a place as dry and desiccated as any the West could contain. Leaving the boat behind, he walked down the path of a long, dry river, which left in its wake brush and trees, mustard flowers and foxtails, sage and scrub. He collected fallen branches and driftwood and began to build a home, leaning tall sticks against a cottonwood tree till he had a nice living space with a pole in the middle to keep it up and a door that could, if he wanted, be closed to keep the critters out. And there were critters. He was glad to see them, furtive and busy, watchful as he built a home and explored his new community. He saw rabbits and coyotes, ground squirrels and chipmunks that tucked under bushes and out of sight. Lizards soaked up the sun, then darted from his approaching shadow. A bobcat wandered past once. He watched it slowly walk along a path, then sit and look at a hillside covered in rabbit holes. The day he found the water, he had been walking north, back into the mountains to see if anyone had sailed in behind him, if other lonely travelers blew in on the breeze. He hoped to find company or someone to share the road until they found civilization again. He found nothing but silence and a gentle wind blowing through the tops of the trees. As he walked, the trees grew more densely crowded, and he felt the soil beneath his feet give way, like it does in spring when the snow melts and water seeps into the ground. Then there was the unmistakable burble of a brook, and in front of him he saw a small pool, not big enough to sit in, but enough to cool off and fill a small cup he had found. He even sat down in it. He felt it wet his legs and bottom and splashed himself with joy. He heard laughter escape from his lips for the first time in months. He put his hand over his mouth to hold it in, but then, realizing he was alone, he let himself chortle and howl until exhaustion overcame him. One of those first mornings, he came upon an old red crate, the kind he remembered from the towns and cities he visited, in the big stores selling cold drinks. It must have washed up in the current the last time that old river flowed. The plastic had hardened and cracked, but it was still useful. He kicked off the dirt, then wiped it down and brought it back to his stick house, where he propped it in front of the door. A fine place for a table or bench, he thought. He sat there in the evenings after that, perched on the crate, watching the sun turn orange as it set behind the mountains, the sky growing bright pink before fading to dark blue. He watched the swallows dive in midair as they chased unseen insects. He sat there on the bench, a bench like no other he'd had in all his days traveling the country, or so it seemed to him in that moment. He lovingly patted it. He reached his hand to scratch his beard, a light nascent fuzz that pricked against his fingertips. What must he look like now, with his hair all wild and dirt embedded in the cracks of his face? Would anyone recognize him as human? Was he human still? He began to wonder as his mind drifted down the lines of his future, out past the setting sun and into the tomorrows that would look so very much like today. He fell asleep that night with a throbbing in his ears, a pulsating sound like the waves of the ocean, wave after wave crashing down on him. There was a time when that's all he wanted, to be alone, on his own, with no one and nothing to disrupt his thoughts. Those were the days when time dripped by, with few changes to mark its passing, day after day, always the same, a never-ending cycle of routine and habit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daria. Wow. I'm loving all the writing today. Our next, here we are, Ravi. Our next reader today is Ravi Chandra Chitampali, who hails from Malaysia. So we're glad we made the time-space continuum work for us today, Ravi. Ravi was a chair of the Department of English at the University of Mysore in India. His works have been published widely in international journals, and his works are taught at Karnataka State Open University in Mysore. He presently lives in Malaysia, as I mentioned. So welcome. We're glad to see you today.
Thank you. May I share screen, please?
Yes. You should be able to, Ravi.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's just taking a little time.
Yes, that's quite all right. Gives us a moment to catch our breath and appreciate. While you're getting that up, I'm going to say a few words to remind you to look in the chat, everyone. I'm sure you're probably doing that, but Erin has been posting links throughout where you can click and go to and find more writing. So, and Ravi, it's starting to look like your screen share is working.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm grateful to Erin Sweeney and the editorial team at Inlandia for publishing two of my poems titled There's No Art That Is Sacred and Delight in its fall 2023 issue. Thank you, Janine Gamlin, for your prompt mails and replies to my queries. The poems now. There is no art that is sacred. There is no art that is sacred when death in leisure makes slow progress through highways and bylanes, from high glaciers to vast seas, across deserts, over grasslands and rocky plateaus. But then comes a visitation, as though in answer to such suffering, as no war nor storm had ever wrecked the listing ship. It was no prayer to a divine force, nor penitence for inherited crime, which turned the flood of sorrow that bankless drowned all humanity, but grace that the horde never knew, which in mid-stride stopped the blind advance. The second poem is titled Delight. A drop of dawn light shook from the wing of an ibis in flight, fell into my rimless bowl, to which I squeezed curacao, blue, summery, and dural. The snow geese arrived, mixing a tinge of rose out of the fringe of night. Then I blew into it the scent of freshly gathered juniper, while sliding a rash of maple in. I sat down then with Kairos, watching the sun bound westward, sipping slowly with SARS. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ravi. We really appreciate your beautiful writing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next reader is Jonathan Cash. Jonathan is a writer, editor, and teacher from San Jose who is currently based in Queens, New York. I'm sure there's a story there. He holds an MFA in fiction from the New School and is currently the books editor for Lit Magazine, the New School's alumni-run literary journal. Thank you for being here today. Welcome.
Right, thank you. So I'll be reading from the beginning of a story called Wesson Mystery Manor. A sweaty young man named Curtis sits alone in an unfamiliar bedroom with 3 boarded windows and 1 door that leads nowhere. He slouches on a dusty antique bed, waiting for someone to come find him, ignoring an intrusive optical illusion that the walls are closing in. He hyperventilates, tries to stop. The door was built into the room without adding a doorway. When Curtis swings the door open, he's face to face with more redwood paneled wall and a framed oil painting of an empty hallway, which seems like a rude joke. He slams the fake door shut, hearing the painting rattle behind it. Curtis rattles as well, but this may just be nerves. His nerves have simmered back here. He's isolated himself more than he intended. The air he breathes is thick and hot. While he broods, Curtis attempts to relax his shoulders and reclines back on the dusty bed. He uncrumples a map of his hometown's most famous attraction, the Wesson Mystery Manor, the House of 1,000 Rooms. The map in Curtis's hands is a Herculean effort to capture the sprawling 5-story floor plan of the manor, starting as a small brochure that folds out and bends in almost unnatural ways to document every room that fits on it. The full map is semicircular, like an unfolded fan or a setting sun, and it's twice the size of Curtis's head. But the room where Curtis is currently stuck doesn't seem to exist on this map, or, at least, he can't trace a specific path from where he ditched his tour guide to this bedroom. Famously said to sprawl into infinity, though it can't cover more than a city block, the house was built back in the early 1900s by a loaded widow named Delilah Wisteria Wesson. After the death of her husband, Jedediah or Jeremiah, Delilah took their mansion and kept building on it, adding extra rooms and windows and staircases and doors, which often led to nowhere and ended abruptly. According to legend, it was all so she'd never have to talk to anybody ever again. Curtis reads much of this from a colorful little box labeled History in a carnivalesque font on the uncrumpled map, a coffee smudge blotting out Jay Wesson's first name. But everyone in his hometown knows the story. The manor is a 10-minute drive from the house where Curtis grew up, a modest dwelling hidden in the shade of the surrounding trees. The manor is also one of the only notable things about the town. It's popular among ghost hunters with TV shows and YouTube channels, who all decided that a place this weird must have spirits to haunt it, which the tour guides encourage. Back in high school, approaching 10 odd years ago, Curtis knew people who worked here as tour guides, though they've all moved on to better things. When he moved away for college, he met people who'd ask him about the manor, if it was actually so spooky in person, if he'd ever seen any ghosts inside. He'd respond that it was hardly scary, he'd never seen any ghosts, and the Wesson Mystery Manor was planted right smack on the town's busiest road, nestled between a retro movie theater and a Burger King. He'd leave out the detail that he's never been inside the manor. Those people he spoke to would nod their heads and speak about something else, and eventually they'd all stop speaking. Curtis isn't entirely sure how they all stopped speaking. People fall out of contact with each other. Tourists aren't supposed to see the manor's map. Revealing the floor plan during the tour is like spoiling a magic trick. But Curtis has driven past the manor so often that he doesn't feel much like a tourist, and also he stole this map. This particular map was swiped from an unpleasant tour guide named Harris. Curtis does not know how to fold this map back up. The creases have no discernible logic to them. Instead, he crumples it up, giving himself a paper cut, blaming himself for that too. Right, and I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
I am spotlighted. Can you hear me? Because I can't hear anything right now.
Okay, you know why? I had it on mute.
Oh,
Remember what I mentioned earlier, if I mute myself, I nearly always forget to anyway. was saying we just came up to the halfway point of our program with James Nicola, who will be our next reader. James Nicola's latest of 8 full-length poetry collections is Natural Tendencies. A returning Inlandia contributor, he has received a Dana Award, 2 Willow Review Awards, and 10 Pushcart nominations, for which he is stunned and grateful. Welcome, James. We're glad to have you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Listen, check out my poem that's also in this fall issue that's online. And it's really a pleasure to be able to read online while you guys are reading the ones that are posted. I'm doing a sort of split screen. And so this is my prose piece, all true, called My First Guru. I'm just reading the first part of it. My First Guru. I left the church. Oh, sorry, church, capital C. Oh, no, that's okay. I'm not in it anymore. So I can use lowercase church, lower c, the Catholic Church, that is. I left the church right before being confirmed when I was in 8th grade. I even remembered the 3 discoveries I made that year, or perhaps in 7th grade, that convinced me to do so because I told a friend or 2 about them. I know I never told a grown-up or anyone affiliated with the church. I just stopped going to confirmation classes and church, and no one said anything to me about it. I can confess to you now that it did not, in the end, come down to not being allowed to have Beethoven as my confirmation name because he was neither a saint, officially, or Catholic. Though this latter point seemed hypocritical to me, because even by then I had learned that Catholic philosophy, quote unquote, held that the Catholic Church was the one universal church. Catholic means universal, and so everyone belonged to it, even if they didn't know it yet, including Beethoven. Anyway, sometime in junior high, I learned that, 1, there were once three popes at once, all vying for official recognition as the only one. This meant that one of the magical tenets I was told back in 2nd grade, preparing for First Communion, could not possibly be true. I distinctly remember asking, so, after you confess, when the priest grants you absolution for your sins, it is definitely true that his superpower came directly from Jesus to St. Peter to the next pope and the next, and so on down the line for 1900 plus years? Every priest then has been ordained in a direct line from the beginning of absolution? Well, the grown-up, maybe a nun who taught 2nd grade Sunday school, said yes. And that's the only reason I had held on for so long, because I had believed her. And then I learned that, 3, there was a time when popes who took a vow of celibacy passed down the papacy to their children. Illegitimate, quote unquote, kids, the B word. Well, that did it for me. I was out of there. A few years later, junior year of high school, I skipped the cafeteria one lunch period and go to the school library instead, which we were allowed to do. I was skipping meals to lose weight. And whom do I find there but my classmate, Donald D. Bennett, blonde and blue-eyed, soon to be our quarterback. But I know him from a few classes together. Instead of letting him be, I sit across from him and ask, what you reading, D? Looked like poetry from my upside-down point of view. He holds the cover up and introduces me to the Tao Te Ching and its famous first line. He also asked me if I have ever had a thought that was not in words, not verbal. I think about it and say, I don't think so. He suggests that it will be very difficult, impossible even, for me to understand the Tao then. I say, oh, and ask him if he has ever been so miserable as to think the world was absurd, ridiculous, or possibly even not worth living in. That semester I was taking philosophy with Mrs. Erickson for my English elective, and we had just hit the existentialists. I think he ducked responding to me by showing me the first poem in the Tao. It starts with the famous line, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. Tao translates as way, path, God, if you think of the notion of God as an active verb rather than a guy in the sky with a beard. The way of God, the path of God, and a few other possibilities. He holds the cover up and introduces me to the Tao Te Ching and its famous first line. Oh, I'm repeating stuff, sorry. Anyway, this was the fall of 1974. 16 years later, I would have my first non-verbal thought. And it goes on. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, James. We appreciate that. I also want to circle back and say thank you to Jonathan. I was muted when I was telling you thank you for your story as well. And now we're on to Colby Gallagher. Excuse me, that's why I muted originally, was the little cough. Pardon me. Colby is based in the mid-Atlantic of the United States, having grown up in the Northeast. His short stories have been published in Calliope, on the web, and Harrisburg Magazine. Welcome, Colby. We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much, Janine. Thank you to Erin for your patience with the back and forth edits. And thanks to everyone for being here. If I get a little scratchy while I'm reading, I might cough a bit, so just bear with me. But I'm going to read an excerpt from my story in the fall issue called The Cosmologist Guitar. Do you remember your grandparents' neighbors, the old couple on their left? I tried to think back, but my head was abuzz with the Spitfire darkness. Maybe. I'd have to think about it. Arn and Martha, the Jennings. There was an old chestnut tree in their front yard, back before the blight, that was so wide around that we needed 4 people and just as many fabric tapes to measure it. So tall your father and I used to fantasize about slipping through a portal to heaven. Imagine the two of us talking like that, if we ever climbed to the top, scooping a hand through a cloud and coming out with a ball of ice. Arn let us take some of the nut crop every year and we'd roast them at Christmas. You don't get trees like that east of the Mississippi now. He trailed off and coughed shallowly, pushing out some sad pearl of the past in his throat. Anyway, one August, a ferocious storm tracked through. Biblical, Martha called it after. As the thunderheads marched in, that chestnut, the tallest thing for miles, unbowed, defiant enough to reach up so close to the face of God, watched the approach of its maker. The word God sounded bizarre coming from Reed's mouth. I had not thought him capable of talking so much about anything other than science. I tried to imagine him and my father as boys, but I could only conjure 2 generic adolescents who bore no special likeness to the men I knew. And sure enough, when it finally rolled in overhead, that beast of a storm rocked that tree with a missile of lightning so awesome that it split the trunk clean down the middle. The strike blew out the windows in the Jennings house and in ours too. The sound, Ben, the sound. You've never heard anything like that. The violence of such a cataclysm, like the grain of the earth being rent apart. Arn said the killing fissure in the trunk glowed red like the fires of perdition, cooling only when the storm mourned its own destruction with a downpour. The tree had to come down after that. Your father and I felt like we had lost a good friend. Arn knew it. He likely loved that tree much more than we did. Well, he was a luthier, a craftsman of stringed instruments, and he took a tithe from that massive heap of lumber and bark and made your father a beautiful pair of skis and me this guitar. As he talked, the ink-black guitar glimmered with a dusting of cobalt blue, like a nocturnal shore alive with bioluminescence. I didn't know you played. Surreptitiously. Your grandfather might have approved of piano or the violin, but not the guitar. It wasn't an instrument to make a master of someone. So I used to smuggle my friend Ed's starter guitar into my room and play quietly late at night or out in the backyard when Mom and Pop were entertaining guests or busy with something. Arn must have heard me, must have known your grandfather pretty well too, because he gave me this guitar and your father those skis when he knew Dad wasn't home. Never since have I received such a gift. I still remember the wave of bewildering relief that swept through me when I took this instrument in my hands, like I had lost a lung and someone had found a way to put it back in, right where it belonged. It's a beautiful guitar, Reed, the most beautiful I've seen. No, Ben, he replied, almost defensively. You don't understand yet. Look up. I obeyed, confused. The darkness glittered, the stars cold in the thin breath of coming autumn. There was no moon and no sound. Reed strummed a single open chord and the firmament rippled like a sheet fluttering periwinkle on a wash line. I blinked, thinking it was my head swimming in daiquiris. Then Reed picked a lick of several notes in an illuminous swath of the Milky Way, a stepping stone path of stars lit up and faded with the pluck of each string. My mouth dropped open and I lurched forward, my feet needing connection to the earth, my face still upturned to heaven. Reed erupted with a laugh that jumped and rollicked with a pure, wondrous joy of which I believed my forefathers incapable. He dashed out a run of phrases and the long galactic runway flashed like a celestial fretboard. He created novel constellations with chords, each star spelling faithful to its corresponding note on the guitar's neck. I tried to swallow, but my throat and mouth were bone dry. Reed worked through several flourishes up octave after octave until he reached a high note that he drew out in an undulating glow far in the eastern sky. Then he crashed down the guitar's neck in a crescendo that bejeweled the Milky Way with supernovas. The cold sky flame simmered and cooled after the music had ceased. The dazzling serpent the melody had drawn through the cosmos vanished out in the west, chasing down the sun. And I'll stop there. Janine, I think you may be muted again.
Thank you. It's that cough. I turn it off so I can cough, and then I didn't turn it back on. I apologize. Colby, thank you very much. That was beautiful. I mentioned that Colby is also an online journal reader, which most people are here today, and as is Margot. But you can tell that because you're seeing in the chat the link to get there to read more and finish stories and read more poems and so on. So anyway, Margot is a Southern California writer whose stories have appeared in a number of journals. Her nonfiction has been published in numerous newspapers and magazines. She lives in the port town of Long Beach. I love that you call Long Beach a port town. That makes it sound romantic and lovely. Thank you, which it is, kind of. Thank you, Margot.
Yeah, I'm going to read a condensed version of Lost Forever, which was actually workshopped in Victoria Waddle's class last spring. Lost Forever. Nora had been waiting weeks to break the news to Ilse. Judging from the blank square on the calendar, today her daughter finally had an opening in her non-stop schedule. She cracked Ilse's bedroom door, noticing one of her feet hanging off the bed. She had her father's feet, along with his sandy hair and blue eyes. If they'd had a second child, they might have gotten a version of Nora, but they never got the chance. Nora thought dropping the bomb during their annual planting to help the monarchs would soften the blow. The ritual started when Ilse's second grade teacher handed out milkweed seeds for the monarch mission. Only months after Friedrich died, they needed something to show they could still be a family without him. The seeds had grown into rangy plants that swayed in the breeze, beckoning bright-winged creatures to deposit carpets of pale eggs that would hatch into hungry caterpillars. Their yard now hosted 4 native varieties: California, woolly, purple, and narrow-leafed. Nora laid 2 place settings on the patio table. Time was running out for her and the monarchs. The 10 million monarchs that clustered in the coastal eucalyptus in the 1980s now numbered barely 20,000. Last summer, they'd only spotted a half dozen pupae. This year, she hoped for 1. For that first seed ball distribution, Ms. Lindsay wore monarch wings. And when she spread them, the room full of second graders witnessed the magic of transformation. Ilse, bounding into the kitchen, snapped Nora from her reverie. "Come on," she said, "let's eat." The clock was ticking, so Nora got down to business. "You know how I've mentioned we couldn't stay in this house forever?" Ilse tossed a crust on the plate. "Yeah." "Insurance money from your dad has run out. We'll have to move." "So we'll have to, like what, move into a different house?" "Probably a condo. If we can't get one of those, then an apartment." Ilse looked confused. "I thought this was our home." "We'll still have a place to live, but we won't have a yard." That seemed to puzzle her. "What's going to happen to our plants?" "We'll have to get rid of things, fix things up and paint, put the place on the market." I'm sorry, Nora said. I thought I could hold out until you were in college, but I didn't quite make it. Honey, said Nora, why don't you skip study group? Maybe we could sit and remember all the fun things we did here. Plant some milkweed. The monarchs aren't coming back. She ran into the house. By the time Nora caught up, she was stuffing her laptop in her backpack. Wait, don't go off upset. Let's talk. But Ilse was already out the door, grabbing her bike from the porch, and then she was gone. Nora wandered outside. Tomorrow she'd make a list of things that needed fixing, contact the lender and buy them more time. Today, though, was for the monarchs and herself. Near the rose arbor was where Ilse took her first steps. Under the orange tree was where Nora's water broke, and in the chair across from Nora was where Friedrich spent his last afternoon. Ms. Lindsay was the only person who didn't act like their misfortune was contagious. She'd smiled kindly as she handed them their monarch info packet. On their way out of the classroom, little Ilse stopped by a poster of trees covered with wintering butterflies. If we don't act now, the monarchs could be lost forever, the poster warned. Mommy, Ilse had asked, pointing at the grayish things clinging to the branches. Are they dead? No, honey, Nora remembered saying. They're just huddled together to stay warm. Shaking free of the memories, Nora picked up the milkweed seeds. She spun around, scattering them to the winds. The voice was faint at first. Mom, are you all right? Oh, honey, you came back. I'm sorry, Mom, she said. Nora let the bag of seeds fall. Mom, said Ilse, you dropped the seeds. You're right. It's silly to keep planting milkweed for butterflies that will never come. No, said Ilse, looking fierce. They'll be back. As they painted and packed and prepared the old bungalow for sale, Ilse emailed Ms. Lindsay, and she and her husband came to see the milkweed garden in person. So full of life, the teacher said, turning to her husband with a knowing look. Bending to examine a stalk, Ilse spotted a line of golden orbs. Look, you guys, she said, eggs. After a long search, Nora found a townhouse with a small patio not too far from the high school. Nora made friends at spin class and joined a hiking group. Ilse found her first boyfriend, and her basketball team made state finals. Ms. Lindsay had twin boys. Ilse went off to college. Nora got remarried. Monarchs laid eggs that hatched into more monarchs that laid eggs. Life, that stubborn, wondrous thing, went on.
Thank you so much, Margot. Beautiful. Really enjoyed that.
Thanks.
Our next reader coming up is Rosalie Hendon, also a online journal contributor. Rosalie is an environmental planner living in Columbus, Ohio. Her work is published in a number of journals. Rosalie is inspired by ecology, relationships, and stories passed down through generations. Welcome, all the way from Columbus.
Thank you. Thanks. It's good to be with you all, and thank you so much for publishing my work. I'm going to share the two poems that you accepted for the fall journal. And thanks again, Erin. The first is called The Gay 90s, and it's about a club that I've gone to a couple times now in Minneapolis. The Gay 90s. Each room unfolds into another, a labyrinth of colored lights and humidity, the press of bodies and the exhalation of breath. This is the straight people trap, my friend says. This first big room is where straight people stop and mostly don't go anywhere else. There are people dancing, 5 to a cage, temples shining with glitter and sweat. There's a haze from here to the back wall, and the air is thick. We push on, perch on small velvet chairs, lining a runway to watch the drag queens work. Eyebrows fierce, they lip sync flawlessly to medleys of Nikki, Bay, Fergie. They strike poses in showers of builds. Finally, we reach a room with a dance floor of lit squares, bowling alley carpet, glowing neon up the wall, mirrors on the ceiling. Sweaty men barely out of adolescence take their shirts off to dance, which sounds sexier than it is in reality. Each graze of their slick skin makes me want to crawl out of my own. Pop from middle school, high school, college has somehow endured. The under 21 crowd belts the lyrics alongside us to Yeah, Cyclone, Teach Me How to Dougie, Black Eyed Peas, and Pitbull. It's a time capsule that everyone climbed into, and there was enough space for all of us. And then the second poem I'll read to you is a poem that a lot of my work, I think a lot about climate change. So, and sorry, it got like so dark, but hopefully you can see me okay. Okay, Summer of Smoke. This is our summer of smoke, the first one at least. The summer of hazy days, char on the tongue, constant air quality alerts. The summer when everyone had to decide if they were sensitive and if they had the privilege to stay inside. It happens other places, I remind myself. Someone I know who worked in China told me he saw a haze from one end of the office to the other. Friends in Portland, San Francisco, Seattle rush on air purifiers. And how to forget, COVID lockdowns in India meant people saw the Himalayas from Punjab for the first time in decades. But we live in Ohio. The upside of how boring it is how boring it is. No earthquakes, no hurricanes, no wildfires, no floods, the occasional tornado. This summer, heat ravages the South. Storms batter the coasts. Miami is underwater, or will be soon. What cities will we save? My parents ask. We can't save them all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosalie. And we could see you beautifully, by the way. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Our next reader coming up is Christine Ray Anderson. Gonna get you in there, Christine. There you are. Who is the author of the chapbook Field of Everlasting. Her poetry has appeared in a number of publications. She has received Tamales Bay and Fish Trap Fellowships, as well as first place award in the Mary C. Moore Poetry Contest. Glad to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Janine. And thanks to the journal editor, Erin Michaela Sweeney, and to the Inlandia Institute, which does such important work. I'm going to read one poem titled Lost Gloves, and it begins with an epigraph from Elizabeth Bishop's poem, One Art. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Those two small hands left behind in the lift we three poets shared after a reading in Seattle where I'd flown following 3 desolate pandemic years. I must have lost them climbing into the back seat, dark already in the rainy gloom, pulling off one glove, then the other. Fumbling for a seatbelt, protection against calamity, always a possibility. Forgetfulness must have set in, even as the gloves fell silently, one by one from my lap, waiting for the next passenger who, delighted by an unexpected gift, picked up one and another, 2 a full set, and so softly lined. Slipped cold hands inside, finally warm in the not yet spring. She might be wearing them even now, walking through the familiar front door, mom's and dad's home, what used to be her home too, when her hands were tinier, when the gloves, my gloves, would have dangled from her child fingers like uninflated party balloons, floppy and soft. Or she might be wearing them with her most charming coat, strolling into an upscale restaurant to meet a boyfriend, his face lifting as she walks in, an unmistakable tingle stirring in her gloved hands. Such an abundant life these gloves can now have. much finer than lying curled up asleep and silesia-lined pockets of my black pea coat, unattended for years in the recesses of my closet. While outside the eggshell of home, the neighborhood elementary school locked its gates, stood empty. Stoplights at the intersection turned green, though no cars waited to go, and huddled inside, I grew older. Maybe it was fate. I'm almost happier to release my gloves to adventure. Having lost so much, it isn't a disaster. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you. Oh my goodness. What a great afternoon. Thank you all for being here once again, and to our guests who are here to cheer on our writers. Our next reader is S.K. Murphy, who is also an online contributor. Kay is a graduate of the University of California, Riverside, so am I, and has earned an MA in literature. She is the author of 5 books, most recently Fake Girl, the first book in the Dragon Singer series for young readers. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this so much. I had an essay and a poem accepted for the journal, which I really appreciate. But today I'm just going to read a short poem. And before I do, I want to mention really quickly Cascadia Poetic Lab's Postcard Poetry Fest that happens every August. The idea behind it is that you write 31 poems in the month of August and send them out on postcards all over the country. When you sign up, when you register for the Poetry Fest in July, you're sent a list of 31 people, and actually 32 because your name's on the list. And the idea is that you're going to write a poem a day, basically. And this is a really great exercise for writing poetry, but also for artists. I received so many postcards from people that were just beautifully done by artists who created these postcards out of their work. That was just amazing. And so you'll understand why this poem is short, because it had to fit on a postcard. And that's also a challenge too. This poem is called Constance. I wake up moody, musing on the problems of yesterday. In the still dark, I take the dogs out to the yard, looking up, as always, to find my Constance. There is Taurus, stretched across the sky, the 7 sisters whispering secrets, and proud Orion, on his back in August, perpetually sighting his arrow nonetheless, unconcerned for the tilt of the earth, today, tomorrow, or yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. You've got us intrigued by that poetry event. We'll have to find out more about it. Sounds like
It's
fun.
great.
Thank you. Our next reader, I am not sure is here. So forgive me, Kate, for keeping you on the screen just a little longer than you'd probably like. Is Carolyn Snow here? And if you are, Carolyn, would you turn your camera on, or your video on rather, so we can find you?
I'm here. Hello.
Oh, yeah. Great, great, great.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Give me one moment to
Okay.
find you. Thanks
And
for,
let me
there
find
you
my-
go. All right. Switching out right now to
Okay.
our next reader, Carolyn Snow, who's a contributor to the anthology. We're glad you could make it.
Hello.
Carolyn has been
Yeah.
writing short stories and poetry for many years. She is an elementary school teacher and enjoys riding her bike, going to the beach, and spending time with friends and family members. So we're very happy you could be here today, Carolyn.
Thank you. Okay, let me find my poem. Here it is. Okay, yeah, I had to do a screenshot of it online. So I just found it. Okay, so my family, so currently it's my generation. We're like the elders of the family. And this poem that I wrote is written as a tribute to the women in my family who brought us all up. I mean, we had, dads and uncles and everybody else around too, but I grew up, early 60s, and the women were in charge. And I just remember my aunts, my mother, my grandmother, everybody always taking care of us, watching out for us, making sure we had everything we needed. And they were always so elegantly dressed, and so beautifully coiffed. Their hair was always together. And I don't know how they did it, honestly. The house was always clean, food was always on the table, and they were always dressed to the nines. And so, especially on Sundays for church. So the title of my poem is called Elegant Brown Skin Women. Seamstresses, chefs, bakers, strong yet silent, fierce yet meek, resourceful, easy smile, a lady, exquisitely dressed, tailored, sophisticated, suits, chic dresses, pillbox hats, delicate gloves, sporting elegant patent pocketbooks, adorned in lovely hats, beautiful dresses, elegant brown skinned women. Daytime, they were maids, cooks, chefs, tailors, teachers, medicine women. With strong hands, easy smile, they were country doctors, creating, toting, giving elixirs and cures. They were powerful yet dainty, brilliant yet uneducated, fierce yet meek. They were moms, aunties, cousins, wives, friends, elegant brown-skinned women, 5-star bakers, master chefs with meager ingredients, flour, butter, cream, sugar, eggs, vanilla, became birthday cakes, wedding cakes, funeral cakes, church cakes, picnic cakes, ice cream. They were grandmothers, great-grandmothers, daytime maids, cooks, church mothers, deaconesses, mentors, pastors' wives. They were confidants, heroes, shelter, a strong tower and covering. They were mentors, the backbone of the Black family. They were mediators, defender of the meek, terror for the strong, a listening ear. They were giving, caring, loving, and sharing. Lovely, beautiful, brown-skinned women. And there you go. My voice is hoarse. I'm just getting over a cold. Sorry.
Very
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You've got us choked up too, Karen.
I know, right? I've yet to get through that whole thing without a tear coming out of my eye. I just I apologize for that.
Powerful. Oh, please don't. Thank you. I'm glad you could be here today.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. We're in the final 4 readers, by the way. This is Patricia L. Scruggs, who is also reading from the anthology. She is a retired art educator. In addition to her poetry collection, Forget the Moon, her work has appeared in On the Bus, Spillway, Rip Rap, Cultural Weekly, and a number of other journals and anthologies. Thank you for being here, Patricia. We're glad to have you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. First poem I'd like to read is called Monogamy Among Males. Mosquitoes. They mate, then die. Peruvian poison frog. Black vulture, necessary creature. Prairie boil. Malagasy jumping rat. Cockroach. Now there's a surprise. 9 species of bird of paradise. Bald eagle, gray wolf, and Kirk's adorable Dick Dick. penguins, African, melogenic, gentoo, and royal. Schistosoma mansoni, that parasitic intestinal worm. Include wood duck, albatross, and shingleback skink, the bulkiest of the blue tongues. TT monkey, Cape spurfowl. Some think swans, Canada geese, and gibbons, but they have been known to take more than one mate in the same season. My own husband cuts flowers from the garden. He arranges them in a vase on the table. Are you still there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, because my screen went blank.
Okay.
Okay. This is called Brake Lights Ahead. Street signs vanish, and behind every lamppost, a dark shape. The rain has come at last, relief from the drought. Soft at first, then hard, then harder. It drums on the tight skins of roofs. Hail batters skylights. The deluge fills gutters, floods street. Driving, I keep my speed low. Watch the brake lights ahead. Plumes of water thrown up by trucks blot out the white lines on the road. This third poem is Waiting for News of the Operation. Dust motes quiver in the slant of afternoon sun. A hanging prism breaks a rainbow against the wall. Through the study window, the stoplight, now green, now yellow, now red. A sickle moon rises through menacing clouds. What's said, what's not said in the dark, as if street sounds could silence our stillness. While we wait for the scream of the telephone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you. Oh my goodness. All right. Next up is Nan Friedley. Nan is also a contributor to the anthology. She is a retired special education teacher and a graduate of Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. Her writings have been published in a poetry chapbook, Short Bus Ride, Indiana Voice Journal, and more. So welcome, Nan. We're glad to have you here today.
Thanks, Janine. Appreciate it. I'm going to keep this short because I'm number 19, and I think you guys would all appreciate if I didn't drone on too much. My first poem came from a prompt to look out my window. Being Thursday and garbage day, this is what I saw. Cans at the curb, overfilled with flattened Amazon boxes, wrapping paper remnants, limp mylar balloons droop from the lid of my neighbor's blue recycle bin across the street, leavings of their toddler's birthday party. Next door neighbor Jeff hired a tree trimmer for his giant palm tree by the fence. Palm fronds like huge fans poke from the lid of his green yard waste container. My brown bin is nearly empty with a few leftover bones from barbecued ribs, cantaloupe rind, wilted lettuce leaves, pungent scent wafting up the street, powered by an early morning breeze on my quiet cul-de-sac.
Thank you, Nan.
One more, real short.
Okay.
My second poem is based on a special person in my life, my grandma. It's called Cluck. Tiny, gentle woman, she kept a daily diary, recorded events to recall later, fearing her memory was fading. On this hot summer day, she donned yellow rubber gloves, sensible low-heeled shoes, well-worn bib apron, garb she saved for the slaughter. Plucked one from the hen house, held it by its hocks, laid it on a concrete block, stomped on its scrawny neck, wrenched off his head with a twist, decapitated its wings, flapped, its body flopped, metallic scent of blood. Feathers plucked, innards out, wings, thighs, breast wrapped in freezer paper, waiting to be Sunday dinner. Today's diary empty, entry, busy day, butcher and chickens.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nan. We always appreciate you.
Thanks.
Our next reader, next to the last, is Diosa X, who will be sharing some poetry today.
All right. Thank you once again for accepting this poem. Ceremony con el zorrillo. Full moon, dark night, sacred smoke, black and white. Flower emerges from entre las flores. Flower se aparece detrás the smoky veil. Blanco y negro, black and white. The juxtaposition of my life. En español, primero la luz. In English, darkness comes first. A black and white skunk at the forefront of a black sky and white moon. Populated solitude, distant proximity, sola in the physical, but in the más allá, ni se diga. Close enough to see, far too far to touch. The oxymoron of my life. A skunk that's black but white. A sky that's dark but bright. Ceremony con el zorrillo in the still of the night. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Beautiful. All right. Our final reader today is James Coates. He's up next. James is a poet, performer, and educator born in Los Angeles and raised in the Inland Empire. With a passion for all things creative, he strives to capture authentic self-expression through his imagistic narrative poetry. Thank you for being here, James. I'm glad you could make it.
Thank you, Janine, and thank you everyone for sharing your beautiful reading tonight. I have two pieces for you of poetry. This first one is titled Sacred Instrument. The beat begins to bounce and the soul starts to sink. Ears tickled by the teasing electric atmosphere, while the rhythm rises through the blood. The body initiates a conversation with itself in the form of a dancing drum composition. Hair running wild as recess, eyes closed to catch the essence of sound. Head shimmies, causing the neck and spine to snake in upright position, calling shoulders to shift, smooth as a new clutch. Arms twist up and around as tree vines reaching for the sky, then back down across the ribs, spreading like roots, digging through musical waves. Stomach tightens and pulls, core stretches, asking hips to turn and swivel left, then right. Cyclone rotations causing thighs to lift and fall, pillars of powerful motion like an old locomotive, thighs to crest the knees to drop it low, knees say will only drop it halfway. Butt cheeks question how much shaking will be required of them tonight. Calves admire how good they look in the club's glow, while doing the least amount of effort. Feet fluttering wings, slightly skimming the floor, ankles sweet jelly spreading back and forth, all while hands scoop musical passion into chests, lungs exhausted, breathing heavy. My brain wonders, why are we even up past our bedtime? Thank you. And this next one is titled Mirror, Mirror. If I were making my own mirror, I don't think the reflection would look like me. I'd add to the parts I want to improve and take away the parts that I detest. I wish this body could replicate how I felt inside, that my strength of will could manifest in strength of body. I'd read book after book on techniques to get the best reflection I could, double and triple check the math. But after every attempt, I still always end up with me. As if God was telling me, why are you trying to change what I already created the way you should be? But I can't believe his message. I've seen his work firsthand. So I smash the glass to pieces, pick up the largest shard, cut my hand on it, contemplate slicing 3 inches higher so I won't have to start over again. Maybe the one ingredient in the process I forgot was self-love. Begin to fashion enough self-esteem to be grateful with the way I came out, because imperfect doesn't equal wrong, and a broken body can still feel joy, can still be seen as a desirable thing despite its different functioning. Perhaps I'll stop letting others teach me how to be my own creator. Growing up, when I was in the way, Mom would say, your daddy wasn't a glassmaker. But maybe she didn't know him that well, because I've always felt so invisible inside. A soul with no sliver of silver to shine against, only a transparent portal, petri dish of pain. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, James. All right. Thank you all for being here and for sharing your beautiful spirits with us and the gorgeous writing. I feel very enriched after readings like this and after launches, and very privileged to be a part of Inlandia and to know all of you. As you are aware, you can go online to the online journal and read all the online journal contributor pieces. And Erin has kindly been posting them. If you would like to order an anthology, you can go to the Inlandia Institute website, to our store, and oh, Erin, you thought of it. Thank you. There's the Square site in the chat. So it is there for us to order as well. Before we go, I would really like to get a picture. We do this at live readings now. If I could, we'll do a screenshot. So everybody who is willing to, of the contributors, let's start with them, and then we'll add everyone who's here if they will allow it. So I'm going to do, I heard somebody click off. Let's see if we can do the gallery shot here, and second, remove spotlight. And Erin, do you mean to be dark? I don't know for sure. There we go. Okay, and Al, I see that you are as well.
Chelsea.
Oh, you know what? We have even more. All right, I'm gonna have to do a couple. So everybody, 1, 2, 3, and I think I think we got it. We did it. And I appreciate everybody for being here. You're wonderful. What a great way to spend a Sunday afternoon. So thank you. And I look forward to seeing you next time. All right. Keep
This
writing.
was great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much,
Thank
Janine.
you.
You were
My pleasure.
amazing as
Thank you.
usual. Thank you.
Yes, great job, everyone. Great
Thank you,
job.
So I
Janine,
have
and
a question. So for the anthologies, is Katie, like, how are we going to get our anthologies?
Katie's figuring that out. We had a
Okay.
delay with the delivery.
Yeah, I remember that. I saw that
Yes,
email.
we had a very disappointing delay. They were supposed to be here last week and they will be here next week, right, Fernanda? You join in the
Oh my
oh
God.
darn brigade here. So
I can't
Katie Porter will
imagine.
be in
Yeah.
touch regarding
Okay.
how they're going to get to you.
Yeah,
I
as soon
can't
as we
imagine
get them.
what she went through with just hearing that. I mean, that must have been devastating. I'm so sorry that happened.
It's
Yeah.
such it's like Christmas morning or something. We're so
Right.
excited. It's a very big deal to
Exactly.
have those anthologies delivered. And we certainly tried. It was a UPS delay and everybody's doing their best, but they'll be here next week.
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway.
I'm glad you're smiling. I can't imagine what you were thinking
I
in your
am
head
now.
when they told you. But you're
now.
handling it very gracefully.
I had a little chance to recover. So
Right.
and we served lemonade at the launch yesterday and had a make lemonade motif, and people were very, very nice about it.
Wow.
Anyway,
Okay.
thank
Well,
you all,
thanks
and good
again
to
for
see
this
new
session.
faces and meet you as well.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
thank you, Janine,
Bye,
all of
everybody.
our performers and audience. Thank you, thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Now,
you
did
so
you say you're in
much.
London? Are you in London right now? Where are you?
I'm in London and I'm about to go to my bed. It's getting late now.
Wow. Okay, I was gonna say it's like 8 hours. What time is it out there?
10 to 11.
Oh my God.
Wow.
We're
Okay.
so glad you stuck with it, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
why we put you first.
You're all like L'Oreal because you're worth it.
Oh, and you're worth it. Your reading was wonderful.
good.
Yes,
Beautiful.
I really enjoyed. That's why I can't wait to get the anthology now, because all of these will all be in there, right?
Yes,
That's
that's
gonna
right.
be
Yes, they're not online. And I love that we're
Right.
doing the combined launches now. We
Yeah.
started that last year, and this way we get to see each other and meet each other and hang out and hear each other's work. And I am so impressed by the level and quality and richness that we hear.
Right.
Anyway, it's just beautiful. And I know Erin feels the same way, and so does Fernanda. And
I do. I love the combined launch. I think it's perfect.
I love it. Yep, it's great.
It's beautiful.
All right, everybody.
All right. It was
Thanks for
wonderful
being
meeting
here.
and seeing everyone.
Yes,
Seeing everyone.
I'm gonna go brave the crowds and try to buy some garland and some Christmas decorations. So we'll see.
Wish you well.
Better now than in 2 weeks. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
For
All
sure.
right.
For sure.
Bye,
Chris, keep up the
everyone.
good work
Good
in
night,
Virginia.
Elizabeth. Good night. Good night.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
The memoir.
Yes.
Crazy. Thank you all. Bye.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.